cold night in the snow. The night was bitterly cold. Snowflakes drifted softly from the sky, blanketing the forest in a thick layer of white. The wind howled through the trees, shaking their branches and sending chills down the spine of anyone unlucky enough to be outside. Among the vast snow-covered wilderness, a tiny figure stumbled through the thick snow. She was small, barely more than a child, with pale, almost glowing skin that contrasted sharply against the dark, frozen landscape. Her pointed ears twitched as she tried to move, but the cold was unbearable. The girl shivered violently, her delicate hands grasping her warm cloak tightly around her tiny body. Every step she took seemed harder than the last. Her breath came in soft puffs, barely visible in the frigid air. Her eyes, bright and strange, flickered as if searching for anything that could offer warmth or safety. She had been lost for hours, or perhaps days. She didn't know. Time felt strange here, in this cold, empty place. The world around her was silent, save for the soft crunch of snow underfoot and the occasional screech of a distant owl. The forest stretched out endlessly, and she had no idea where she was. With each step, she grew weaker. Her legs wobbled, and her vision blurred. Her mind screamed for rest, but her body refused to stop moving. The alien girl was close to collapse, her breath coming in desperate, ragged gasps. Her small body had never been built to endure this kind of cold for so long. The chill was creeping into her bones, making her feel like she might shatter into 1,000 pieces. The pain in her chest grew sharper with each passing moment. She had never been so far from home before, never so alone. Her mind wandered back to her spaceship, the crash, and the chaos that followed. She had barely escaped the wreckage, her ship lost in this strange, frozen world. She had been stranded here for far too long, and her strength was fading, just when she thought she could go no further. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed into the snow. The cold bit into her skin as she fell, but she couldn't muster the strength to get back up. Her eyes fluttered closed, her body too weak to move, her mind too tired to stay alert. As the world around her began to fade, a strange warmth suddenly washed over her. It felt out of place in this frozen wilderness, like a distant sun breaking through the clouds. She opened her eyes, blinking against the brightness that seemed to surround her. There, standing in front of her, was a human, a man. He was tall, dressed in a thick coat, and his eyes were wide with shock as he looked down at her. His face softened with concern, and he crouched down beside her, reaching out a hand. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked, his voice soft but urgent. The alien girl blinked again, trying to focus, but her strength had almost completely left her. She could feel the warmth of his hand, and the comfort it offered was unlike anything she had ever felt before. She wanted to reach out to him, too. Speak, but the words wouldn't come. The man didn't seem to mind. He gently scooped her up in his arms, careful not to hurt her fragile body. She felt safe in his hold, despite the strange newness of it all. Her head rested against his chest, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to relax, to let go. The human carried her through the snow, moving quickly as the cold wind howled around them. The alien girl could barely keep her eyes open, the exhaustion from her journey finally taking its toll. She wanted to speak, to say something, anything, but she didn't have the strength. As they reached a small shelter, the man gently laid her down by a fire. The warmth from the flames began to seep into her chilled skin, easing the pain that had been building for hours. She closed her eyes, allowing herself to drift off into a deep, peaceful sleep. The man sat nearby, watching her carefully. He had never seen anything like her before. Her skin, the shape of her ears, the way she glowed faintly in the firelight. He knew she wasn't from this world. He could see the worry in her eyes when she woke for a brief moment, and it stirred something inside him. She was an alien, a creature from somewhere far beyond the stars, lost and alone. And somehow he had found her, but the questions were swirling. In his mind, who was she? Where did she come from? Why was she alone in this cold, desolate place? And most importantly, what was he supposed to do now? The alien girl stirred slightly in her sleep, her small form curled up by the fire. The warmth seemed to be doing its job, but the man knew that she needed more than just shelter. She needed help, and he was determined to give it to her. As the night grew colder, the man sat beside the fire, watching over her. He had no idea what was ahead, but he knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning, and whatever came next, he would face it with her. The snow outside continued to fall, the world silent and still. But for the first time in what felt like forever, the tiny alien girl had found a glimmer of hope. The unexpected stranger the next morning. The soft crackle of the fire was the first thing the alien girl heard as she slowly awoke. The warmth from the flames was soothing, but her body still felt weak. She blinked, her eyes adjusting to the dim light around her. For a moment, she forgot where she was, until the memories of the cold night flooded back. She turned her head, and there, sitting on a log beside the fire, was the human who had found her. He was staring at the flames, his face thoughtful, but his eyes flicked to her as soon as she moved. "Good morning," he said softly, his voice warm but full of uncertainty. "How are you feeling?" The alien girl didn't know how to respond. She didn't understand all the words he spoke, but the kindness in his tone was unmistakable. She sat up slowly, her body aching as she did so, and pulled her cloak tighter around her shoulders. The snow outside the shelter was still falling softly, covering everything in a thick, quiet blanket. The man watched her closely, his expression a mix of curiosity and concern. He didn't know what to make of the strange girl who had appeared out of nowhere in the snow. But something about her, her quiet strength, the way she seemed so out of place, yet so determined, made him want to help her. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small container of water, offering it to her. "Here, drink this. It'll help you feel better," he said, his voice gentle. The alien girl took the water, staring at it for a moment, before she brought it to her lips. She had never seen anything quite like it, but she was too thirsty to care. The cold water slid down her throat, and for the first time in what felt like days, she felt some relief. "Are you?" The man hesitated, unsure of how to ask the questions that were swirling in his mind. "Where did you come from?" The alien girl looked at him, her bright eyes searching his face. She wanted to tell him everything, to explain why she was here, but the words didn't come. She had no idea how to communicate with him. Her own language felt foreign to her now, disconnected from the world around her. The human seemed to sense her confusion. He sat down beside her, his movements slow and careful. "It's okay," he said. "You don't have to talk if you don't want to, but I want to help you." She looked at him again, her gaze softening. There was something in his sense of kindness, of trust that made her believe him. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she wasn't alone. The human's name was Marcus. He introduced himself quietly, but the alien girl still didn't understand the words. She nodded, trying to convey that she understood, even though She couldn't speak his language. He smiled at her, as if sensing her attempt to communicate. "I'm glad you're okay," he said, "but I'm not sure what to do next." The girl's eyes widened. She could sense his confusion, his uncertainty. She knew that he had no idea who she was or where she came from, but she also knew that she couldn't stay in the shelter forever. She needed to find her way home. With a soft sigh, Marcus stood up and stretched. "Well, I guess we'll figure it out together. I've got supplies, and I can help you get back on your feet. We'll take it one step at a time." The alien girl didn't know how she would get back to her home planet, but she knew that she couldn't do it alone. She needed this human's help. She needed him to understand her, to trust her the way she was beginning to trust him. But there was a nagging feeling in her chest. She wasn't sure how much longer she could hide the truth. Her people were out there, searching for her. But they weren't just looking for her. They were looking for something else, something important, and the human Marcus was getting closer to the truth. The more he helped her, the more he would start to wonder what kind of alien she really was. Marcus seemed to sense the change in the air. His eyes narrowed slightly, as if he were piecing together something in his mind. But before he could ask any more questions, the wind outside howled, and the sound of distant footsteps echoed through the snow. Someone or something was out. There, the alien girl stiffened, her senses alert. She could feel the presence of others nearby, and her heart raced with the sudden realization that they might not be alone after all. Who were they? Were they here to help her, or were they threat? Marcus stood, his eyes scanning the outside of the shelter. The alien girl's instincts flared, and she reached out, gently grabbing his arm. She shook her head, silently warning him to stay quiet. The danger was near, and the human needed to be protected. But Marcus was determined. "We need to find out what's going on," he whispered, slowly stepping toward the door. The alien girl didn't want him to go, but she couldn't stop him. She had to trust him, just as he had trusted her. As Marcus opened the door, the cold wind rushed in, but the world outside seemed eerily quiet. The footsteps had stopped. The snow was still, and there was no sign of anyone approaching. Marcus turned back to the girl. "You okay?" She nodded, but her heart was pounding in her chest. The danger was still out there. She just didn't know who or what it was. A glimpse of her world, the quiet outside the shelter, seemed almost too perfect to still. The wind had stopped howling, and the snow had settled, leaving behind a serene, almost surreal landscape. But for the alien girl, there was no peace. Her senses were sharp, alert, aware of every shift in the air around her. She could feel the cold pressing in from all directions, but it wasn't just the temperature that made her uneasy. It was the presence she sensed in the distance, something watching, waiting. Marcus closed the door behind him and turned back to her, his face full of concern. He saw the tension in her body, the way her eyes darted around the room as if expecting something to leap from the shadows. He wasn't sure what she was sensing, but he could tell that something was wrong. "You don't have to be scared," he said gently, stepping closer to her. "We'll figure this out." The alien girl didn't respond immediately. She was trying to push away the fear that had begun to settle deep in her chest. She hadn't told him everything yet about who she really was, where she came from, and why she was so desperate to escape. She had to keep that secret, at least for now. But the more she spent time with him, the more she felt a connection she couldn't ignore. It was strange, but it was real. She glanced up at him, trying to communicate her unease with only her eyes. Marcus, ever observant, seemed to understand. He crouched down in front of her, his face softening with a reassuring smile. I can't imagine what you've been through, he said, his voice low and calm. But I promise, I'll help you. You're not alone anymore. For the first time since she had crashed on Earth, the alien girl felt a warmth in her chest, a feeling that wasn't just a physical warmth of the fire. There was something in Marcus's words, in the kindness of his eyes, that made her believe she could trust him. But there was something more she needed to tell him, something that would change everything. She couldn't keep running from the truth. With a deep breath, she reached up to her throat, touching the small, glowing mark that pulsed faintly against her skin. She needed him to understand. The mark, the power within her, it wasn't just for survival, it was her key to everything. But telling him that would bring her people even closer to her, and that meant danger for both of them. I'm not from here, she finally whispered, her voice small but clear. I come from a place far, far away. Marcus's eyes widened. He'd guessed as much, but hearing her say it aloud made it feel real. He took a cautious step back, his mind racing with the implications of her words. He had never met an alien before, at least, not one he knew of. And yet here she was, sitting in front of him, her glowing skin and sharp, pointed ears undeniable proof of her origin. Where do you come from? He asked softly, his curiosity getting the best of him. What's your world like? The alien girl hesitated. She wasn't sure how much she should say. Her world was so different from his, so foreign. She wanted to explain, but her language didn't match his. Even though she understood a little of his speech, communicating her true story was going to be a challenge. But then, something strange happened. A shimmering light appeared in front of her, flickering like a tiny star. Her eyes widened as the light grew brighter, the warmth of it spreading through her chest. Marcus looked at her in confusion, but before he could say anything, the light expanded into a vivid image, like a hologram floating in the air between them. It showed a city unlike any he had ever seen before, towering structures of glass and metal, floating ships in the sky, and streets filled with beings like her, with glowing skin and long, slender bodies. The alien girl's face softened as the image flickered, showing the beauty of her world, the place she had once called home. She pointed to the glowing city, her finger trembling. This is my home, she said quietly. But ... it's gone now. It was destroyed. My people. They were attacked. Marcus watched, fascinated and horrified at the same time. The image shifted, showing a dark sky filled with explosions, ships burning in the air. His heart sank as the alien girl's eyes filled with sorrow. My people are gone, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I was the last to leave. He could feel the weight of her words settle heavily in the small shelter. There was so much more to her story than he could have imagined. She wasn't just an alien from another world, she was a survivor of something catastrophic, a war, an invasion. The horror she had lived through was unimaginable. Why were you ... attacked? Marcus asked, his voice gentle, trying not to push too hard. He didn't want to upset her further, but the questions were burning in his mind. The alien girl bit her lip, her fingers trembling. She had always been taught to keep her powers hidden, to never reveal too much about her race's abilities. But in that moment, she knew she had no choice. Because of what I carry, she said softly. I am the key to something important, something they want. But they can't have it. The air in the shelter grew heavy, and the fire crackled loudly, as if echoing the tension that had suddenly filled the room. The alien girl's words were both a warning and a plea. She didn't want to explain further. She didn't want Marcus to know everything, not yet. But the truth was beginning to slip out. Marcus stared at her, his mind trying to piece together the fragments of information she had shared. Her world had been destroyed. She was the last of her people, and she carried something important, something dangerous, it seemed. He stood up slowly, his thoughts a whirlwind. He didn't know what the future held for them, but one thing was clear: he was in this now. The alien girl wasn't just someone he had stumbled upon in the snow. She was someone he was going to protect, someone he was going to help, no matter what the cost. "I'll help you," he said finally, his voice steady and determined. "I don't know how, but I will." The alien girl met his gaze, her eyes filled with gratitude and something else, something darker. She had no choice but to trust him, but she couldn't shake the feeling that the danger was only just beginning. And the truth was, Marcus had no idea what he was about to get himself into. The storm of secrets, the morning light seeped through the cracks of the shelter, casting a soft glow on the snow-covered landscape outside. The world was still, but the alien girl could feel the tension in the air. Something was coming. She could sense it, that quiet, invisible weight that pressed down on everything. Marcus, however, seemed to be at ease. He had built a small campfire, its orange glow dancing against the cold, and was busy organizing supplies. He had been kind to her, offering warmth, food, and comfort without asking for anything in return. He was trying his best to help, but she knew that the truth, her truth, was beginning to creep out in small, subtle ways. She stood up slowly, feeling the pull of her powers within her, but she held back. There was too much danger now. The very thing she had been trying to avoid had already found her, and it was only a matter of time before it caught up with them. "Are you ready to go?" Marcus's voice cut through her thoughts. He had turned around, a small smile on his face, but there was a hint of concern in his eyes as he noticed her distant expression. The alien girl didn't reply immediately. Instead, she glanced out the window of the shelter, her sharp eyes scanning the quiet, snowy world. The snow had begun to fall harder, and a gust of wind rattled the thin walls of their shelter. "I think we need to stay here for a little longer," she finally spoke, her voice steady but full of an emotion that Marcus couldn't place. She wasn't sure if it was fear, hope, or something else that was keeping her rooted to the spot. She didn't want him to leave, not yet. Marcus frowned, sensing the change in the air. "Why?" He stepped closer to her, his brow furrowed. "What's wrong?" The alien girl closed her eyes, trying to find the right words. She had been running from this moment, the moment when her past would catch up with her, but it was here now, knocking at the door. She had to explain, had to tell him the truth, or they would both be in danger. "I can't explain everything," she said quietly. "But, ... there are people coming, people who want what I have." Her words hung in the air like a weight that neither of them could escape. The human's eyes widened, and for the first time, she saw fear flicker across his face. He had been trying to protect her, but now he understood the gravity of what was at stake. "Who are they?" Marcus asked, his voice low, cautious. "What do they want from you?" The alien girl hesitated, her gaze turning to the small bundle of supplies that Marcus had packed. "They're not from here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're not human. They've come for me." Marcus opened his mouth to ask more questions, but before he could speak, a sudden gust of wind howled outside, louder than any storm they had heard before. The snow picked up, swirling in chaotic patterns around the shelter. The alien girl's eyes widened. The wind wasn't normal, there was something about it, something unnatural. Before Marcus could react, the ground beneath them trembled, and the shelter's walls creaked ominously. The alien girl grabbed his arm, pulling him closer to the center of the room. "They're here," she said, her voice a mixture of fear and determination. "They've found us." The human's heart raced as he scanned the stormy landscape. "Outside, what do we do?" he asked, panic creeping into his voice. The alien girl closed her eyes for a brief moment, feeling the force of her powers stir within her. She had no choice but to protect them both. She didn't want to hurt anyone, but if they were coming for her, there was no other option. She stood tall, her hands glowing with a soft light. "Stay close to me," she commanded. "I'll keep you safe." Marcus could only nod, trusting her even though he didn't fully understand what was happening. The snow outside seemed to be alive now, moving in unnatural ways, swirling around in violent, unpredictable gusts. The air grew heavier with each passing second, and a strange humming sound began to fill the space. Suddenly, the door of the shelter burst open, and a gust of icy wind swept through the room. Standing in the doorway were figures cloaked in dark armor, their faces hidden behind reflective visors. They were humanoid, but there was something about them, something unsettling. Their presence seemed to freeze the air, sending a chill down Marcus's spine. The alien girl stepped forward, her glow growing brighter as she raised her hands. "Leave us alone," she said, her voice strong and commanding. "You don't belong here." The figures didn't speak. Instead, they advanced slowly, the sound of their heavy footsteps echoing in the silence. The human felt his breath catch in his throat. Who were they? Why were they here? One of the figures reached up and removed their helmet, revealing a face inhuman. Pale and angular, with eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. They stared at the alien girl, and for a moment the room was silent. The figure spoke, its voice cold and mechanical. "You cannot hide from us," it said. "You have what we need." Marcus's heart raced. The alien girl's eyes flashed with something dangerous, something he had never seen before. This was no longer just a rescue mission. It was a battle for survival. The alien girl stood her ground, her powers swirling around her like a storm. "You won't take it from me," she said, her voice steady, though her eyes betrayed the fear she was trying to hide. The figure raised a hand, and suddenly the temperature in the room dropped. Ice spread along the walls, and the floor beneath them seemed to crack and freeze. But the alien girl's energy flared, a protective shield surrounding her and Marcus. "You will never have it," she declared again, her voice full of resolve. "I will protect it, no matter what." The figures hesitated, unsure of how to proceed. But the alien girl's powers were growing stronger by the second, and it was clear that a fight was inevitable. Marcus stood behind her, ready to face whatever came next. He didn't know what these beings wanted, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't leaving her side. They were in this together. The alien girl's power crackled in the air as the figures finally made their move. The storm outside raged louder, and the world seemed to stand still, waiting for what would come next. The battle for survival had begun. The truth about the alien, the figures in the doorway stood frozen, their eyes locked on the alien girl with a cold, calculating intensity. The air between them was thick with tension. Marcus could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. His heart pounded in his chest as the temperature continued to plummet. The alien girl's glowing aura was the only source of warmth in the freezing cold, and it was growing brighter by the second. He glanced at her, trying to understand what was happening. He had known she was different, but this power, this raw energy, was beyond anything he could have imagined. It was like she wasn't just from another world, she was the key to something much bigger. But what? The figure closest to them stepped forward, his eyes narrowing behind the visor. You can't hide from us forever. You know why we're here. The alien girl's eyes flared with intensity, her voice steady but filled with an unmistakable authority. I know why you're here, she replied, her words cutting through the cold air. But you're not getting what you want. Not today. The figure's lip curled into a sneer, but he didn't respond immediately. Instead, he signaled to the others, and they began to advance. Their movements synchronized and fluid, like they had done this 1,000 times before. The alien girl's shield flickered, reacting to their presence, but it was clear they were no ordinary attackers. These beings were powerful, far more so than anything Marcus had ever seen. Why are you after her? Marcus demanded, his voice rising with panic as he stood his ground beside the alien girl. His mind raced. He had no idea what these beings were, but they had to be dangerous if they were willing to hunt down someone like her. The figure tilted his head slightly, as if considering Marcus's question. She's a weapon, he finally said, his voice cold and emotionless. She's the key to an entire galaxy's fate. Her people's technology is unlike anything you can imagine, and she carries the most powerful piece of it. The alien girl's face tightened as the truth began to seep out. She had been trying to keep the full story hidden, but it was becoming clear that the truth couldn't be avoided any longer. These creatures knew far more than she had hoped. The stakes were higher than she had imagined. Marcus turned to her, confusion and concern evident in his expression. What does that mean? What is it you're carrying? What do they want from you? The alien girl looked at him, her eyes full of regret and sorrow. She had hoped to protect him from this truth, but there was no way to shield him now. I am a descendant of the last of my people. We were the protectors of something very powerful, she explained, her voice barely a whisper. I carry the last piece of that power. The words hung in the air like an unbearable weight. Marcus stared at her, struggling to comprehend what she had just said. So, you're saying they're after you because you hold some kind of power? The alien girl nodded slowly, her eyes filled with sadness. Yes, and they will stop at nothing to get it. My people were wiped out because of it, and now they want to finish what they started. Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. The idea of a powerful alien race hunting her, seeking a mysterious weapon hidden within her, made his head spin. But he could see the desperation in her eyes, the determination. She wasn't just trying to survive, she was trying to protect something bigger than herself. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. What exactly is this power? Why do they need it? The alien girl looked away for a moment, as if grappling with the weight of her own memories. It's not just power. It's technology knowledge that could reshape entire worlds. It can bend time and space itself, but it's also a weapon, a dangerous one. The figure from the doorway stepped forward again, his voice colder now, more threatening. You're wasting your time, he said. Give it to us, and we'll spare your life. Otherwise, you know what happens. Marcus stepped forward, his fists clenched. She's not giving you anything, he spat, his voice filled with defiance. You're not taking her. Not while I'm still standing. The alien girl's heart raced, but she couldn't allow Marcus to face this danger alone. She had to protect him, even if it meant revealing the full extent of the power she had kept hidden. The time for secrets was over. If they were going to survive, they needed to stand together. She raised her hands once more, her energy swirling around her like a tempest. The air crackled with power, and the room seemed to hum with the intensity of it. "You're not taking me or what I carry," she said, her voice firm, determined. "I will fight for my life, for the truth." The figures paused, sensing the change in the air. They knew they were dealing with something far more dangerous than they had anticipated. The alien girl was no ordinary being. She was the last of her kind, and her power was unlike anything they had encountered before. But the figure who had spoken earlier was undeterred. "You don't have a choice," he said, his voice low and threatening. "Either you give us what we want, or you die with it." The alien girl's glow intensified, her power now fully unleashed. She wasn't backing down. This was it. The fight she had been running from had finally arrived, and she would not let them take what was hers. The storm outside had picked up once more, the snow swirling violently around the shelter. The ground beneath them seemed to tremble with the force of her power, and the figures before her hesitated, sensing the danger. They had underestimated her, and they were about to find out just how wrong they were in that moment. Marcus knew there was no turning back. The alien girl was no longer just a stranger to him. She was a warrior, a protector, and she had a story that was much bigger than either of them. He had to trust her now, no matter what the cost. "Get ready," the alien girl said quietly, her eyes meeting his. "It's time." The storm outside raged louder, and the final battle for survival was about to begin. A new bond, the storm outside roared like a beast, the winds howling and the snow swirling with wild ferocity. But inside the shelter, an eerie calm had settled. The alien girl stood tall, her glow casting an ethereal light across the room, illuminating her fierce determination. Marcus, standing beside her, was no longer just an observer. He was a part of this. He didn't know what had come over him, but as he stood next to the alien girl, he felt a strange sense of purpose, a connection to her he couldn't explain. The figures in the doorway seemed to hesitate, their confidence wavering as they watched the girl's power build. She was no longer the fragile, lost alien they had found in the snow. She was a force, a living weapon, and they knew it. The tension in the room was thick, charged with the energy that crackled around the girl's form. Marcus could feel it, too, the raw power that pulsed in the air, threatening to explode at any moment. One of the figures, the one who had spoken earlier, stepped forward again. His hands were raised in a gesture of truce, but there was no mistaking the arrogance in his voice. "You think you can defeat us? You're just a child. You can't protect yourself, let alone fight us." The alien girl's eyes narrowed, her hands glowing brighter in response to his words. "You've underestimated me," she said quietly, her voice calm but filled with power, "and that will be your downfall." Marcus watched, breathless. He had never seen anyone, human or otherwise, so full of strength and conviction. This alien girl, no, this warrior was unlike anything he had ever known. He could see the fear in her eyes, but it wasn't the kind of fear that made her weak. It was the fear of losing everything, the fear of losing the last part of her people, the last piece of their legacy, and she was ready to fight for it. "Stand back," she whispered to Marcus, not taking her eyes off the approaching figures. "This is my battle, But you've given me something I didn't have before: hope. That's all I need to win. Marcus didn't know what to say. He had only known the alien girl for a short time, yet he felt an overwhelming desire to protect her, to stand beside her no matter what came next. He nodded, stepping back as she stepped forward, her power radiating from her like a storm ready to unleash. The figures in the doorway seemed to sense the change in the air. They had been ready to take her, to claim her and her powers for themselves. But they hadn't counted on her resistance, her will to survive. They were no longer dealing with a helpless stranger. They were facing an adversary who had everything to lose. The alien girl raised her hand, and the ground beneath them trembled. The air became heavy with energy, and the snow outside began to swell violently, as if responding to her command. A flash of light exploded from her hands, creating a powerful shockwave that slammed into the figures, pushing them back. The force was enough to send them stumbling, and Marcus gasped as he felt the impact from across the room. "Get ready," the alien girl said, her voice steady as she continued to control the power building inside her. "I'm not going down without a fight." The figures recovered quickly, but they were not prepared for the intensity of her power. They raised their weapons, but the alien girl was faster. With a wave of her hand, the air around them shimmered, and their weapons flew from their hands, crashing against the walls. The figures tried to regroup, but the alien girl's power was too overwhelming. The shelter seemed to pulse with energy, and the temperature dropped even further. The air thick with tension. Marcus stood behind her, feeling the raw energy that surrounded them. For the first time, he realized just how much danger they were in, and just how much he had come to care for this alien girl, this warrior who had fought for survival, who had fought for hope. He wasn't going to let her fight alone, without thinking. He grabbed a heavy object from the ground, a makeshift weapon, and stepped forward. The alien girl glanced at him, a flicker of surprise crossing her face, but then she smiled, just for a moment. It wasn't a smile of victory, but one of understanding. They were in this together. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly. "Do," Marcus replied, his voice full of conviction. "You've helped me more than I can ever repay. I'm not just going to stand back while you fight alone." The alien girl nodded, her gaze softening. "Thank you." With that, they both turned their attention back to the figures, who were now regrouping. Their leader spoke, his voice now tinged with frustration. "You think you can win this? You're just delaying the inevitable. You can't escape." The alien girl's response was swift, her power surging as she stepped forward once again. "I don't need to escape. I just need to fight." The battle that followed was nothing like anything Marcus had ever seen. The alien girl's power clashed against the figure's advanced technology, sparks flying as energy collided. Marcus fought beside her, using the makeshift weapon to defend himself, to protect her, even as the world around them seemed to crumble under the force of their fight. In the heat of the battle, Marcus realized something. This wasn't just about survival, it was about something deeper. The bond between him and the alien girl had become something unbreakable. They were no longer just two strangers caught in a fight for their lives. They were partners, fighting for something bigger than themselves. The figures continued to press forward, but they were starting to falter. The alien girl's powers were too much for them. Her glow intensified, blindingly bright, as the storm outside raged even harder. The figures backed away, their expressions masked behind their helmets, but their hesitation was clear. They weren't prepared for the force they were facing. And then, with a final surge of power, The alien girl unleashed her strongest blast yet. The shockwave sent the figures flying backward, crashing into the walls of the shelter. The battle was over. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus and the alien girl stood there, breathing heavily, both battered but unbroken. They had won for now. The alien girl's glow began to fade, and the storm outside settled into a quiet snowfall once again. She turned to Marcus, her eyes soft with gratitude. "You saved me," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "No," Marcus replied, his voice steady. "We saved each other." And in that moment, they both knew that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. They were no longer strangers. They were attenuated by the bond they had forged in the heat of battle, and ready to face whatever came next. The final choice, the silence in the shelter, was almost deafening after the chaos of the battle. The wind outside had calmed, and the snow had stopped falling. The storm that had raged for what felt like an eternity was now nothing more than a soft, gentle snowfall, the world outside looking eerily peaceful in contrast to the violence that had just unfolded. Marcus stood beside the alien girl, both of them breathing heavily, their bodies sore from the fight. The figures that had threatened them now lay unconscious, scattered across the floor, defeated by the girl's raw power and the courage they had shared in the heat of battle. But even as the immediate danger had passed, something lingered in the air. The alien girl's face was tense, her brow furrowed as she stared out into the cold, her mind clearly elsewhere. Marcus couldn't help but notice the sorrow in her eyes, the way her shoulders were hunched as if she were carrying a weight that no one else could see. "Are you okay?" Marcus asked softly, his voice full of concern. He had been with her through so much, but he could tell that something was troubling her. She turned to him slowly, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of gratitude and fear. "I don't know," she said quietly. "I've been running from this for so long, and now I don't know if I can keep running. I can't do it alone anymore." Marcus stepped closer, his heart aching for her. He knew the journey had been difficult for her, but now, in the aftermath of the battle, it seemed that something more was at stake. She had revealed the truth to him about her people, about her power, about the weight of her past, but there was still so much left unsaid. "You don't have to do it alone," he said gently. "I'm here. I'm with you, no matter what comes next." The alien girl's gaze softened, and for a moment she looked as though she might cry. But instead, she closed her eyes, taking a deep breath as if preparing herself for something. When she opened her eyes again, they were filled with a mixture of resolve and sadness. "I'm not just running from them," she whispered, her voice breaking slightly. "I'm running from myself, from the power I carry, the responsibility. My people were destroyed because of it, and now I'm the last one left." Marcus could see the fear in her eyes, the fear of her own strength, the fear of what she might become if she couldn't control it. He could understand that fear. After everything they had been through, he knew she was still haunted by the past, by the weight of her people's destruction. "You're not alone in this," Marcus repeated, his voice firm. "You've got me, and together we can figure this out. You don't have to carry this burden by yourself." She looked at him, the sadness in her eyes slowly giving way to something else, something like hope. "I want to believe that," she said softly, "but I don't know what's waiting for me. I don't know if I'm strong enough to face it." Marcus reached out, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I believe in you," he said simply, "and I'll help you every step of the way." For a moment, the alien girl didn't respond. She stood there, her head lowered, her mind clearly weighing the decision that was ahead of her. The future was uncertain, and the path she would have to walk was filled with unknowns. But she knew one thing for sure: she couldn't keep running. Not anymore. "I have to make a choice," she said quietly, her voice full of conviction. "A choice about who I am, and what I'm willing to fight for." Marcus nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. "What's your choice?" The alien girl looked at him, her eyes filled with resolve. "I choose to stop running. I choose to fight for what's right, for the future of my people, for all of us." And in that moment, Marcus knew that the alien girl had made her decision. She wasn't just going to fight for her survival, she was going to fight for something bigger, for hope, for redemption, for a future that was still possible despite everything that had happened. As they stood together in the quiet aftermath of the battle, Marcus felt something shift between them. It wasn't just a partnership anymore, it was something deeper. A bond forged through shared struggle, through facing the darkest parts of themselves and still choosing to move forward. "Whatever happens next," Marcus said, his voice steady, "we'll face it together." The alien girl nodded, her gaze softening as she looked at him. "Together," she echoed, and as the sun began to rise outside, casting a soft golden glow across the snowy landscape, they knew that this was just the beginning. The journey ahead would be difficult, and the challenges they would face were still unknown. But they also knew that together they had the strength to overcome whatever came next. In that moment, surrounded by the quiet of the snow-covered world, they made a promise to each other, a promise to never give up, no matter what the future held, because together they were unstoppable. The end was just the beginning.